Hello there and welcome back to another Cloud with Chris weekly vlog. You're with me, Chris Reddington, and here we'll be talking about all things cloud. So thank you once again for joining. We're going to jump straight in because there's quite a lot to cover today. So let's first look at what happened last week. So a week ago today would have been vlog number 3, and of course today is vlog number 4. And in the last vlog we talked about things like contributing to open source, the Azure Thames Valley, for example, the meetup group I'm working with, and some tech news and various bits and pieces going on as well. Then later on in the week I worked on another blog post and got that out, all focused around the JAMStack. So don't worry, nothing to do with Paddington Bear at all, but to do with JavaScript, APIs and markup languages. So things like Markdown, for example. So very much related actually to some of the topics that I've talked about recently, along with Hugo, the static content hosting pattern, for example. So very much on theme there. And if you want to look at, static content, static websites, being able to potentially save some money and gain some performance in doing so, that might be one to go and look at for you. Now, it doesn't stop there. It was a very busy week last week. And alongside everything else that we've just mentioned, I was also on the MSHowTo page. So I was asked by Mert to join the show. So thank you very much once again for having me. And we talked all about cloud design patterns, so various cloud design patterns that are out there, when you may or may not want to use them, are they vendor specific, and various great questions actually. So go ahead, check out that video. I'll make sure the link is in the show notes for this one, because it was a really great discussion. Had a really great time talking about that as well. So thanks again for having me there. Really do appreciate that invite. And finally of last week was also the Valet key and the Gatekeeper pattern. So once again was joined by, you probably know him already, Peter Piper. We've done a few sessions together now on APIs, various API design patterns. So this one was a little more focused on some patterns focused around the security side of things. So if that's a topic that's of interest to you, go ahead, check that one out. And again, I'll put the link either on the screen here or in the show notes there as well. So that's what happened last week. What is coming up over the next week, or next few sessions, I should say? Well, first off, we've obviously got today's vlog, and I'll be updating you on what's kind of coming up for me, Azure Thames Valley, and also some various news pieces. I've also got another blog coming out on Wednesday. This one is going to be more about my setup, because I've had a few people ask me how I've gone and done it, what I'm using, so I figured I'd split that into a few parts. And the first one is really focused on the powerhouse behind the system, and that is my PC that I built back last year. I'm very proud of the build, so I detail all the specs, some of the decisions I made, and just a bit of a walkthrough of what I've done. So that'll be coming out on Wednesday. And by the way, in case you haven't noticed, there is a regular rhythm with the content that I'm pushing out. So on Mondays around 10:30 a.m. UK time, I'm pushing out the vlogs. On Wednesday around lunchtime, I'm pushing out the blogs. And then on Friday around 3:30 in the afternoon, I'm pushing out some kind of technical content or some recording. So this week, for example, the content will be all around the health endpoint monitoring pattern this time. So if you are someone that has a service or maybe a set of services that you want to go and monitor, you don't just want to understand, is this one component up, but how are the various other components like the database, the queue service, other microservices that it depends on, how are they all impacting the overall solution, the components there? Being able to get an aggregated view of that. That's the health endpoint monitoring pattern. So if you're interested in monitoring design patterns, take a look at that one that will be coming out on Friday. Now, what is coming up in terms of the next few weeks, in terms of sessions? Well, on March 10th of Feb, I will be talking to Azureish live. I will be going ahead and doing an Among Us stream with them, which I'm very much looking forward to. So do stay tuned and keep your eyes peeled for that one. Then later in February, on the 15th of Feb, I will be joining JonnyChipz, and I'll be in conversations with his series there. So we'll be recording that on the 15th, and it should be coming out a little bit later. So stay tuned to some of his social media if you are interested in watching that one. And as you probably already know from the last session, but just a reminder, 25th of February, I'm going to be speaking in a webinar with Squared Up. There are a series of webinars coming up, but I'll be talking in their fourth one, 25th of Feb, all around application observability in a distributed world. So think about things like App Insights, some of those common features of Azure Monitor that come up, and how they interact together, and how you think of these distributed monitoring scenarios. Which haystack do you look in, and how do you figure out then where the needle is, that kind of idea. And then along with that, I have been invited back to speak on the MSHowTo Show, so that will be on March the 25th, I believe. So I'm looking forward to that one. And of course, I have actually missed one in between as well. I'm also going to be speaking on March the 6th for the Limerick Dotnet Azure user group. And I'll be talking all about how GitHub Actions can help you deploy, build, plan, etc. a blog or a podcast website, particularly focusing on the static asset side of things, like what I've done with Cloud with Chris, but could extend to any app potentially there. So maybe not just GitHub Actions, but GitHub overall. So a very, very busy few weeks coming up. And that's not the end of it either, because, of course, at some point I'm going to be presenting at Azure Thames Valley as well. I did mention about Azure Thames Valley last week. I want to just give a little bit of an update here this week. So Azure Thames Valley, we are on meetup.com. We are now on Twitter. So meetup.com/Azure-Thames-Valley. On Twitter, we are at Azure Thames. We are also on LinkedIn, and I'll put the LinkedIn group details in the show description for you all. And the latest is that we have a website as well, which I put together late last week. We don't have a domain name yet, so I'll put the details in as soon as we've got that all registered and sorted. But you can see things are really moving along, and we're starting to get some momentum behind this. Now that's all good. We've got some presence there, which is great. But the important bit is the committee met with each other this week, and we were talking about, you know, what we want to do, the types of sessions we want to run, how we want to take things forward. So I think it's the third week every Tuesday, so the third week of each month, we're going to be running a meetup. So that'll be February the 16th, March the 16th, and April the 20th are the next three. Get those in your calendars and your diaries if you're nearby, or even if you're not nearby, actually. That's probably worth saying. Of course, with everything going on with COVID, we're not going to be able to meet up in person at the moment, but we are going to be able to do some virtual meetups. So, of course, anyone and everyone is welcome. And if you're a speaker listening to this and you're thinking, I'd like to do a talk, on the website, when it is live, you'll be able to go ahead, find the details for our Sessionize page, and go and submit a talk there. And likewise, if you're someone in the community not quite ready or feeling up to doing a talk yet, you'd like to do something a little shorter and impactful, we are looking for lightning talk speakers as well. So maybe that's something you could go ahead and submit as well if you're in the community and thinking of getting involved. And of course, if you don't want to speak, you just want to come along and take in the sites, take in all of the technology, then please do come along. We'd love to have you there. So lots going on with Azure Thames Valley. I'm really excited for that one to kick off and come together there. So, you know, big shout out to the committee. I'm really excited behind all of the energy and all of the momentum we've started kicking off with that. So, those are the updates. Let's now take a look at just some technical updates which have come out over the last few weeks, and we'll start with Azure. So let's just scroll down a little bit here to the 18th where we left off from last week. And first off, a few updates to do with Azure Backup. So encryption at rest using customer managed keys is now GA, which is great news. Backup for Azure Managed Disk is limited preview as well. A few updates relating to Azure Monitor here by the looks of it. IoT Edge, confidential computing, and a couple related to Cosmos DB here as well. The like keyword support is now generally available. PowerShell command support now GA. And then if we scroll to the bottom of this page, multiple region availability zones available with single region write. So that different tier of high availability, if that's something that you need, for example. Being able to announce the GA of Java messaging service, for example, for Service Bus there. What else have we got? We have got AKS updates here as well. The Key Vault CSI driver support. That one we'll come back to in a little bit. Optional uptime SLA. Really good one to call out that has been available for public clusters for some time. So by default, AKS, you don't get an SLA for the front-end masternodes. But actually, if you do want that, there is an optional add-on you can turn on. That has been available for the public clusters for some time. But private clusters, that is now available there as well. So great news. That's there in GA. Quite a few monitoring updates. The Linux diagnostics agents, the App Insights automated tracking of click events, changing Azure Monitor logs or changes in Azure Monitor logs. Network Insights now GA as well. ASR, some updates. Various regional updates, GA of App Insights and Log Analytics in Germany West Central, UAE North and Switzerland West. Some updates there to do with storage accounts, some additional regional updates, App Insights, Log Analytics in Japan West. Some updates with AKS, again, we'll come back to those automatic cluster upgrades. That definitely deserves its own little soundbite, I think, there. Some updates around Azure DevOps, which we'll cover. And then copy blob support over private endpoints, which again is another great addition. So very, very busy week for Azure engineering there and the updates which have been coming out. What else has been going on? So first off, we will just jump into that Secret Store CSI driver update. So this has been an open source project for quite some time. And in case you're not familiar with what it is, it's really an interface for Kubernetes. So imagine that you don't want to actually go and store your secrets in Kubernetes because of the way Kubernetes stores secrets, base 64 encoding, not particularly secret, depending on where, and how you're hosting. You may not trust what's going on with the secrets being stored in etcd. Maybe you want to externalize those somewhere else, somewhere like Azure Key Vault. So that is where the Secret Store CSI driver comes in. And what it allows you to do is run a few pods. And effectively what they can do then is help you inject your secrets, your keys, your secret material, if you like, those certificates as well there, into your Kubernetes deployment. So worth an exploration for sure if security in your Kubernetes cluster is something that you are particularly concerned about there. And next up, we have the public preview of the automatic cluster upgrades in AKS. So I do want to jump into this one for a moment, actually, because there's some considerations to be made around this bit. So I think this is a really great update. I think this makes the operations of an AKS cluster even easier, but this does come with some considerations, right? So as you can see on screen, if you're watching, if you're listening, I'll read it out for you now. We've got a few different channels here. So you've got none, meaning no auto upgrade, you manage that yourself. Patch, stable, and rapid. So what patch will do is it will automatically upgrade the cluster to your latest supported patch version. So if you're on version 1.17.7, and there are versions 17.9, 18.4, 18.6, 19.1, for example, then the cluster will get upgraded rather to 17.9. If you're in stable, then what will happen is if you're on 17.7, then it will go to 1.18.6. And if you want the rapid release cycle, then it will work its way up all the way to 1.19.1 from 1.17.9. Why am I mentioning all these version numbers? Why is this important? Well, remember that as you upgrade between a 1.16, a 1.17, a 1.18, that there are potentially some breaking changes in the API versions, and they do deprecate some of these beta API versions. So be careful if you are using any of those beta APIs within your deployments. This is something to be very careful of, that you have a good testing process and validation process for what your YAML files and your schemas are all doing there. So really, it's all about testing and making sure that you've got the right operational procedures in place to handle that kind of automatic updates. Again, great feature. You just need to make sure that you're prepared to deal with that for your applications, your deployments there. So what else? Azure DevOps updates. So as of the 14th of January, so we actually missed this one in the last update, but we caught it in the Azure Updates page a moment ago there. There are some Azure DevOps updates to be aware of. So the first couple relating to delivery plans 2.0. So there's some updates in terms of roll-up information and how you can visualize those. Some condensed views in there, for example, as well. But particularly where I want to focus is the Azure pipeline side of things. So the first one is this uses statement. Now this uses statement allows you basically to, within a job, have a uses keyword and basically show what resources you're depending on and what resources you need as part of that job. So, for example, the scenario they give on the description here is you could do a users step with your repositories and check out a particular repo and not need a checkout task. Sure, that sounds great. Why do I need another way of doing the same thing? Well, actually, this does solve a particular problem. If you were using things like the matrix keyword, there are potentially some scenarios where you had to deal with authentication of jobs and pipelines and various bits and pieces. It actually helps you solve those challenges. So if you were experiencing some challenges with the matrix kind of setup and being able to use those Azure pipeline jobs, then this might be for you. So definitely go ahead and explore that one. Manual validation inside of YAML pipelines is the other update here. So I'm not talking about the manual approvals that you get with different environments and stages. What I'm talking about is within a stage, imagine in between tasks, you need to go and validate a certain configuration, a certain scenario is set up as expected before you continue with the remainder of the tasks. That is what this manual validation step is. So that is now available for you to go and use in your pipeline there. So go and check that one out there. And that's it on the updates there. So we'll next move on to the Azure DevOps side of things. There's, of course, further updates from the Microsoft DevOps community. We won't review those just because of time this week. But what I do want to jump into is this one blog post on Pulumi. So you may have heard of Terraform, you may have heard of ARM templates or Ansible or similar, and different infrastructure as code configuration providers or frameworks. Those providers typically use things like JSON or YAML or HashiCorp language, for example. Pulumi is slightly different. So it is another infrastructure as code tool or framework, but rather than using something like JSON or YAML, which I'd consider to be, I guess a descriptive or a meta markup language kind of thing, Pulumi uses languages that we know and love and are familiar with. So it's not imperative like, hey, I want to create this thing, then this thing, then this thing. It still follows that deterministic aspect of this is what I want you to go and deploy, make it so. But rather than using things like a domain-specific language, we can go and use things like JavaScript, TypeScript, Python, Go, or .NET Core. And it does support the major clouds, AWS, Azure, GCP. Also Kubernetes is supported as well. And integrates nicely with things like GitHub, GitLab, Azure DevOps, and all the various tooling that you would know and love and expect. So if it's not on your radar, it's certainly one to watch and check out, because I think some of the overhead or the challenges sometimes with infrastructure as code are those languages, the complexity behind some of those. So if you are a Python developer or a .NET developer or TypeScript or whatever of those options I mentioned earlier, then this could be something which is maybe a nice way to expand your skill set into that DevOps space. So definitely keep a watch out on Pulumi. Could be an interesting one for you. Then on the GitHub side of things, not much to update on here this week, apart from there was a really good blog post all about the best of Changelog, the 2020 edition. So we're not going to go ahead and review every single thing, but I'm going to do a super quick recap. They give updates on the GitHub CLI that was released, GitHub for mobile, GitHub Enterprise Server, some of the automation updates with GitHub Actions, the workflow visualization, self-hosted runners, environments and environment secrets. That is my favorite release from GitHub this year. Manual approvals, various other action changes, various security updates, and of course I've mentioned in previous posts how I think GitHub is really serving a niche with security and DevSecOps. Being able to work better with communities, so updates to GitHub issues, updates to GitHub discussions, GitHub sponsors was introduced as well in 2019 and has been expanded upon in 2020, and then various pull request updates as well, being able to convert pull requests to drafts, multi-line code suggestions, default branch naming, and of course many UI updates, least of which to mention of course is having dark mode available there as well. So an absolute ton of updates there in terms of Azure DevOps, GitHub, the things that are going on Cloud with Chris, the upcoming sessions that I've got going on as well, and of course Azure Thames Valley. So with that, we are 22 minutes in, a little bit longer this week. Apologies for that, but a lot to update on. So you know what to do. If you've liked this episode, please go ahead, like that video, please, and hit that subscribe button. Hit the notification bell as well, so you know as soon as I upload content. And of course, if you don't watch on YouTube, that is absolutely fine. I am on Spotify. I am on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and cloudwithchris.com as well. So please do like and follow on whichever platform of choice. And of course, if you are in a local area or even further afield, as I mentioned earlier, and you are interested in what we're doing with Azure Thames Valley, we have got some great speakers on the cards that we're looking to pull together. So do go ahead, follow us on the various platforms. We are on LinkedIn, we are on Twitter, we are on meetup.com, and as soon as I know the details of our website and the domain name, I will link that in the description as well. But everyone is very welcome, and of course we are looking for speakers and lightning talk subjects as well, so please do get involved and come along. So with that, thank you for your time today, greatly appreciated as always, and all there is to say until the next vlog, thank you for watching and bye for now.